The sun was just beginning to peek over the sprawling skyline of Chicago, casting long golden rays through the massive windows of O'Hare International Airport. Inside the bustling terminal, there was an air of excitement and urgency as travelers hurried to their gates, lugging suitcases and cradling steaming cups of coffee. Amidst the sea of passengers, one particular pair stood out, an 11-year-old boy named Nathan Porter and his mother, Dr. Evelyn Porter. Nathan, with his unruly dark hair and sparkling green eyes, clutched a worn astronomy book against his chest, its cover depicting swirling galaxies and brilliant stars. Dressed neatly in a crisp white polo shirt, dark jeans, and slightly scuffed sneakers, still bearing a faint trace of mud from his last soccer practice, he couldn't contain the wide, unabashed grin on his face. Today was special. No, today was extraordinary. It was only his second time on a plane, and for the first time ever, he was about to experience the luxury of first-class seating. Beside him, Evelyn was as composed and graceful as ever, her calm demeanor and precise movements hinting at the skilled surgeon she was. She wore a tailored navy blazer over a soft cream blouse, her auburn hair swept back in a practical ponytail, revealing her sharp but kind features. A sense of pride and accomplishment settled within her as she watched her son's bubbling excitement, reminding herself that the long months of saving and planning had been worth every bit of sacrifice. After countless late-night shifts and meticulous budgeting, she had finally managed to surprise Nathan with first-class tickets for their trip to Los Angeles. A journey to visit his grandfather who had recently moved to a quiet little house by the beach. For Evelyn, the trip wasn't just a chance to reconnect with family, it was a rare opportunity to treat her son to something truly memorable, a well-deserved break after a whirlwind year. As they navigated the busy terminal, Evelyn couldn't help but glance at Nathan, whose eyes were practically glowing with anticipation. He kept glancing at the ticket in his hand, as if checking to make sure it was real, his fingers tracing the bold 1A printed on the stub. To him, first class was nothing short of a dream, a place he had only seen through movies and heard about in stories from his friends who had flown with their well-to-do families. Today, he was the one living that dream, and his mother couldn't be prouder. As they approached Gate 22, the boarding call crackled over the intercom, and Evelyn gently guided Nathan forward, reminding him to stay close. He was too busy soaking in every detail, the polished marble floors, the vibrant advertisements for tropical getaways, and the flashing LED signs indicating flight statuses. They stepped into the priority boarding line, and Nathan couldn't help but notice the envious glances of other passengers. His chest swelled with pride, not out of arrogance but pure, unadulterated joy. When the flight attendant greeted them with a warm smile and a cheerful, "Welcome aboard," Nathan replied with an enthusiastic, "Thank you," that made the young woman chuckle softly. As they moved down the jet bridge, Evelyn placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, feeling the familiar pang of longing she always carried whenever she saw his father's playful spirit reflected in their son. Nathan's dad had passed away when he was just a toddler, and Evelyn had devoted herself to giving Nathan a life filled with love, adventure, and wisdom. This trip was just one of many moments where she wanted him to feel special, to know that his happiness was worth every ounce of effort she put into her demanding career as a pediatric cardiologist. When they stepped into the first-class cabin, Nathan froze for a moment, his jaw dropping in sheer amazement. The spacious leather seats looked like miniature thrones, each with a personal screen and a small, elegantly folded blanket resting on top. A flight attendant approached with a welcoming gesture, guiding them to their seats. Nathan eagerly slid into his assigned spot by the window, eyes widening as he pressed his face against the glass to take in the view of the massive planes lined up on the tarmac. Evelyn couldn't help but laugh as Nathan marveled at the space around him, running his fingers over the smooth armrests and testing the recline feature with a giggle. "Mom, look! This seat goes all the way back," he whispered, as if afraid speaking too loudly might shatter the magic of the moment. Evelyn settled into her own seat with a serene smile, placing her carry-on in the overhead compartment and pulling out a small pack of travel wipes to clean Nathan's hands. "You like it?" she asked knowingly, and Nathan's face lit up like a firework. "I love it," he exclaimed, his excitement so palpable that a few nearby passengers couldn't help but smile. Evelyn took a deep breath, feeling the tension of weeks of preparation finally melt away. This was worth it. Worth the double shifts, the missed weekends, and the sleepless nights. Her son's joy was worth every sacrifice. Just as the final passengers were boarding, Nathan busied himself by flipping through his astronomy book, tracing the constellations with his finger, while muttering facts about star clusters under his breath. Evelyn glanced around the cabin, noticing how different the atmosphere was from economy. Quiet, calm, and almost surreal. She leaned back, allowing herself a moment of rare relaxation when she caught sight of Nathan looking at something just past her shoulder. His expression had changed from pure delight to one of quiet concern. Following his gaze, Evelyn spotted the source of his distraction. A heavily pregnant woman stepping into the cabin, her face flushed and visibly weary. She wore a faded pink sundress stretched over her belly, and her hands cradled the bump as if trying to support the weight. Evelyn felt a twinge of empathy, instantly recognizing the discomfort of late pregnancy. The woman hesitated near the entrance, speaking softly to a flight attendant and gesturing toward the back of the plane, her voice just barely audible over the hum of the engines. Though Evelyn couldn't make out the words, she could see the tiredness etched into every movement the woman made. Nathan, ever observant and compassionate, looked up at his mom with that familiar glint in his eyes, the one that told her he was already forming an idea. He tugged lightly at her sleeve, his voice soft and thoughtful. "Mom," he whispered, his brow furrowing with concern. "Can I give her my seat?" Evelyn blinked in surprise, her mind racing to process his offer. They had saved so hard for this moment, this one chance to give Nathan a taste of something luxurious. Yet she knew her son better than anyone, and the determination in his gaze made it clear that his heart was already set. For a fleeting moment, pride and reluctance warred within her, but then she gave his shoulder a gentle squeeze, nodding with a warm smile. "Are you sure, honey?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Nathan nodded earnestly. "She looks really tired, and she has a baby. I can sit in her seat. It's okay, Mom." Evelyn felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, not out of sadness, but out of a deep, unspoken pride in the boy she had raised. In that moment, she knew that while she had wanted to give Nathan a first-class experience, he had already shown the world he had a first-class heart. Nathan's small hand clutched tightly to his astronomy book as he rose from his plush first-class seat, his young heart thudding with both excitement and an odd, newfound sense of responsibility. Evelyn watched him with a mixture of pride and wonder as he carefully slid off the wide leather cushion, glancing back one more time at the seat he had so eagerly claimed just minutes earlier. The spacious, luxurious first-class cabin had felt like stepping into a dream, with its buttery leather seats, personal screens, and the quiet elegance of people accustomed to such comforts. But to Nathan, none of it mattered anymore. His focus had shifted entirely to the tired woman in the faded pink sundress, still standing uncertainly at the entrance to the cabin, shifting her weight from one aching leg to the other. She looked as though the sheer effort of standing there was overwhelming, and the way she pressed a hand into the small of her back betrayed a pain she was trying to conceal. Evelyn's heart swelled with both pride and a hint of regret, knowing how much Nathan had anticipated this experience. And yet here he was, choosing kindness without a moment's hesitation. She straightened up, signaling to the flight attendant with a gentle wave, and as the woman approached, Nathan took a tentative step forward, his voice soft but unwavering. "Excuse me, ma'am?" Nathan began, looking up at the flight attendant with those bright, sincere green eyes that never failed to convey honesty. Can I give my seat to that lady? She looks really tired." The attendant blinked, clearly taken aback as if no one had ever made such an offer before. Evelyn couldn't help but smile, pride swelling within her chest. The attendant's eyes softened as she glanced at Evelyn for confirmation, and Evelyn nodded with a warm, supportive smile. "That's very kind of you," the attendant replied, crouching down to Nathan's level. "Are you sure you want to do that? It's a pretty special seat." Nathan nodded with absolute certainty. She needs it more than I do. I can sit in her seat instead. The flight attendant's expression melted into one of admiration, and she gave his shoulder a gentle squeeze before walking over to the woman. Evelyn couldn't hear the brief conversation, but she watched as the woman's eyes widened in shock and then misted over with tears. She glanced around the cabin, almost as if trying to find the person responsible for such unexpected generosity, and when the attendant gestured toward Nathan, the woman pressed her trembling hands to her lips in disbelief. Nathan, for his part, was already gathering his small backpack and preparing to move. Evelyn helped him secure the astronomy book into the front pocket, her hands brushing his shoulders with a reassuring pat. As the pregnant woman approached, still looking overwhelmed, Evelyn gave her a warm smile. "Hi," the woman managed, her voice trembling. Are you sure about this? I don't want to take his seat." Evelyn smiled softly and glanced at Nathan, letting him speak for himself. "It's okay," he said earnestly. "You look really tired, and my mom says it's important to help people when they need it." The woman's face crumpled into a grateful smile, and tears began to pool in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, kneeling slightly to look Nathan in the eye. "You are such a sweet, kind boy. I don't know how to thank you." Nathan just shrugged, his cheeks flushing pink, and looked down at his shoes as if a bit embarrassed by all the attention. Evelyn put a gentle hand on the woman's shoulder. "Please, take it. It's his choice, and we're happy to help." The woman's hand brushed lightly over her baby bump as if offering a silent blessing, and she looked at Nathan one more time before settling into the seat with a grateful sigh. The nearby passengers, who had been half watching the exchange, now openly smiled and whispered among themselves, impressed by the young boy's generosity. An elderly gentleman in a tailored suit nodded approvingly while a woman with a laptop paused her typing to watch with a wistful smile. One man, sitting a few rows back, discreetly pulled out his phone and snapped a quick photo, clearly moved by the simple act of kindness. Meanwhile, the flight attendant returned with a bright, almost motherly smile and offered to walk Nathan to his new seat. As they made their way down the aisle, Nathan glanced back one last time at his old seat, where the pregnant woman was already adjusting the plush headrest and letting out a relieved, contented sigh. The sight made his heart feel light and full at the same time, and he couldn't help but smile to himself. As they navigated toward the economy cabin, the noise and bustle increased significantly, contrasting with the tranquil atmosphere of first class. The seats were narrower, arranged in tighter rows, and conversations hummed like a restless beehive. Nathan was guided to his new spot, 26D, right in the center of the row. A middle-aged man in a plaid shirt looked up from his newspaper and gave him a curious glance. "You flying alone, kid?" the man asked with a hint of amusement. Nathan shook his head, still cheerful despite the change in accommodations. "My mom's up front," he explained, not wanting to make a big deal out of his decision. "I gave up my seat because a lady needed it more." The man raised his eyebrows, clearly impressed. "That's mighty generous of you. Not many folks would do that." Nathan just smiled, setting his backpack under the seat and fastening his seatbelt. As the plane taxied to the runway, Nathan glanced around, taking in the atmosphere of the economy cabin. There were families juggling restless toddlers, businessmen hunched over laptops, and a little girl across the aisle clutching a stuffed bunny, staring out the window with wide, anxious eyes. Sensing her fear, Nathan leaned over slightly and offered her a gentle, encouraging smile. "It's just like a roller coaster," he whispered, trying to make her feel better. "When it goes up, it feels funny, but it's kind of cool too." The girl looked at him with cautious hope, her small hands gripping the armrest a little less tightly. A flight attendant passing by overheard and gave Nathan an approving nod. As the engines roared to life and the plane began its ascent, Nathan couldn't help but feel a rush of exhilaration despite the unfamiliar surroundings. The thrill of flight still gripped his heart, and even from the middle of the cabin, he could see a sliver of sky through the window. He glanced back over his shoulder, hoping his mom was okay, but he knew deep down that she would be proud of him. Beside him, the man in the plaid shirt, who had introduced himself as Leo, leaned in with a kind smile. "You did a good thing today, kid," Leo said softly. "Your mom must be real proud." Nathan gave a small, shy grin. "She always says that being kind makes the world a little better. I guess it just felt like the right thing to do." Leo nodded thoughtfully, looking at the boy with a mixture of admiration and respect. As the plane leveled off and the seatbelt sign dinged off, Nathan reached for his astronomy book, but his mind kept drifting back to the peaceful expression on the woman's face when she settled into the seat. There was a warmth in his chest that he couldn't quite explain, a sense that he had done something important, something that mattered more than any comfortable seat or fancy experience. Unbeknownst to him, that one small act was about to ripple out in ways he could never have imagined, touching lives and hearts far beyond that single flight. The flight from Chicago to Los Angeles continued smoothly after the initial excitement, with Nathan quietly settling into his new seat in the economy cabin. Though the space was more cramped and the hum of conversations louder, he didn't mind. He still had his astronomy book and his new friend Leo, who was proving to be an excellent storyteller. Leo was telling Nathan about the community center where he worked, a place in Chicago dedicated to helping underprivileged kids find their way through mentorship, homework help, and hands-on projects like model rocket building. Nathan's eyes lit up when Leo mentioned rockets, and he couldn't resist sharing about his own model rocket he built for the science fair last year. The way Leo listened intently, nodding with genuine interest and asking just the right questions, made Nathan feel seen and appreciated. The older man couldn't help but admire this young boy, so kind-hearted and unassuming, completely unaware of the impact his decision had already made. As the plane sailed smoothly through the sky, Nathan couldn't help but glance back occasionally, wondering how the lady in his former seat was doing. He imagined her relaxing, maybe even sleeping comfortably for the first time in a long while. Just the thought brought a small, contented smile to his face. Meanwhile, back in first class, Evelyn sat quietly, her mind running over the incredible act of selflessness her son had just displayed. She hadn't forced him or even suggested it. Nathan had chosen to be kind on his own, and that, to her, was the most beautiful part. She knew it wasn't about teaching him to be kind, it was simply who he was, and it made her heart swell with pride. The pregnant woman, Grace, had finally settled into the plush leather seat, stretching her aching legs and leaning back with a relieved sigh. She couldn't help but glance around, still half expecting someone to tell her it was all a mistake, that she didn't belong in this lap of luxury. But nobody seemed to mind. In fact, the elderly couple seated just across the aisle gave her a warm smile, clearly having witnessed the whole exchange. Grace still couldn't believe it. A little boy giving up a first-class seat for her. The thought brought tears to her eyes again, and she pressed a hand to her chest as if to steady her emotions. She knew she had to find a way to thank him properly, but her mind was still spinning from the kindness of it all. Unbeknownst to both Nathan and Evelyn, a fellow passenger named Ryan Davis, a freelance journalist sitting in the row behind, where Nathan had originally been, had quietly filmed the entire exchange on his phone. The short, candid video captured Nathan's earnest words, his mother's gentle encouragement, and the stunned gratitude on Grace's face. Ryan hadn't intended to record it at first, but something about the scene had struck a chord deep within him. It wasn't just the act itself, it was the purity of it, the unprompted nature of a child doing something purely because it was the right thing to do. After the flight leveled off and the seatbelt sign turned off, Ryan opened his laptop and uploaded the video to his social media account with a simple caption. "In a world that can feel so cold, this boy just reminded me that kindness still exists. Be like Nathan." He didn't expect much from it, just wanted to share a little light in what had felt like an increasingly cynical world. But within minutes, his notifications began to explode. The video was spreading like wildfire, getting shared and reshared, the hashtag trending almost instantly. Comments poured in from all over the country. Teachers praising the boy's parents, parents wishing their own children would learn from him, and countless others simply expressing how the story restored their faith in humanity. Ryan's post was picked up by a popular social media page that specialized in heartwarming stories, and from there it took off like a rocket. By the time the plane was halfway to Los Angeles, the video had garnered hundreds of thousands of views and comments, and major news outlets were already reaching out to Ryan for permission to use the clip. Back in economy class, Nathan remained blissfully unaware of his newfound fame, absorbed in learning more about Leo's after-school programs and how they helped kids build model rockets. Leo, meanwhile, received a text from a coworker at the community center, a screenshot of Nathan's video with the caption, "Hey, isn't this the kid you just texted us about?" Leo raised an eyebrow and pulled up the clip, his mouth falling open as he recognized Nathan immediately. "Hey, buddy," Leo said cautiously, trying not to startle him. "You remember that lady you gave your seat to?" Nathan looked up from his book and nodded. "Yeah, I hope she's okay." Leo smiled, still holding his phone. "She's definitely okay. I think you might be famous, though." Nathan's eyes went wide with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "Famous? How?" Leo hesitated, trying to put it into words. "Someone filmed what you did and posted it online. A lot of people are talking about how kind you are." Nathan furrowed his brow, not entirely understanding how something so simple could mean so much to so many. "I just wanted her to be comfortable," he said softly, almost to himself. Leo chuckled, reaching over to tousle the boy's hair. "Sometimes that's all it takes to make a big difference, kid. You did something good. Real good." As the plane approached cruising altitude, Evelyn's phone vibrated in her hand. She glanced down, puzzled to see dozens of notifications from friends, colleagues, and even patients. Confused, she unlocked her phone to find messages pouring in, texts like, "Your son is incredible," and "Just saw the video, so proud of Nathan." Bewildered, she tapped on one of the links sent to her and watched the video with growing astonishment. Her heart thudded as she saw Nathan on screen, offering his seat with that gentle, sincere voice, his small face bright with empathy. Evelyn looked up in awe, glancing back toward economy class, where she could just make out the top of his head over the seats. Tears filled her eyes, not just from pride, but from the sheer beauty of seeing her son's spirit shine so openly. She couldn't believe it. The world was seeing the same boy she had always known, the one who collected worms from the sidewalk after the rain to keep them from getting stepped on, who saved half his lunch money to buy treats for the stray cat behind the school. Back in first class, Grace, unaware of the viral storm brewing, had fallen into a peaceful sleep, her body finally allowing itself to relax. Her hands unconsciously rested on her belly, a faint smile on her lips as she dreamed of better days. Meanwhile, the flight attendants whispered among themselves, having caught wind of the viral sensation that was happening right under their noses. Some discreetly peeked at their phones, sharing looks of admiration and exchanging glances at the boy who had unknowingly captured the nation's heart. One of them quietly approached Evelyn and leaned down to speak softly. "Ma'am, I just wanted to let you know, your son's video is going viral. People are really moved by what he did." Evelyn smiled through the lump in her throat and nodded gratefully, her eyes drifting back to where Nathan sat, chatting with Leo like it was just another ordinary day. She couldn't help but wonder how this small moment, born purely out of a child's selfless heart, had suddenly turned into something so much bigger. Unbeknownst to Nathan, his simple act of kindness was about to change not just his life, but countless others as the world discovered what it truly meant to have a first-class heart. As the plane glided smoothly through the air, thousands of feet above the patchwork landscape below, Evelyn's phone continued to buzz relentlessly, and her inbox filled with messages from friends, colleagues, and even acquaintances she hadn't heard from in years. They all seemed to have one thing in common: awe and admiration for her son. It was surreal to think that just a few hours earlier, Nathan had been an ordinary boy with dreams of space exploration and a penchant for kindness, and now his simple act of giving up a seat had made him an internet sensation. Evelyn's heart was a confusing mix of pride and unease. She knew her son's heart was pure, his intentions untainted by any desire for fame, but she also knew how quickly the internet could turn something beautiful into something twisted. She couldn't help but feel protective, worrying how Nathan would react when he discovered just how much attention he had attracted. With a deep breath, she forced herself to focus on the positives. Her little boy's heart had touched so many, reminding people that kindness didn't need to be grand to be powerful. She glanced at her phone again, scrolling through a few of the comments, her heart softening as she saw how people were sharing their own stories of kindness in response. As Evelyn processed the overwhelming surge of support, she noticed one message that made her heart stop. A private message from a name she hadn't thought about in months. Victor Langston. Victor Langston, a powerful and wealthy businessman, was the father of one of Evelyn's former patients, Alyssa Langston. Months ago, Evelyn had performed a highly complex heart surgery on Alyssa, a bright-eyed 7-year-old with a congenital heart defect. The surgery had been successful, but post-operative complications had led to a prolonged recovery. Though Alyssa ultimately pulled through, Victor had been livid, blaming Evelyn for every setback and accusing her of negligence. Despite being cleared by both the hospital and an independent review board, Evelyn had faced relentless pressure from the Langston family, especially from Victor, who had made it his mission to tarnish her reputation. She hadn't heard from him in months, assuming he had moved on after failing to get the hospital to terminate her contract. Yet now, as she stared at the message preview, a cold knot of dread coiled in her stomach. With a hesitant tap, she opened the message, her breath catching as she read the words. "Don't think I don't see what you're doing, using your kid to gain sympathy after what you did to Alyssa. You'll pay for this. I won't let you rewrite the truth." Evelyn's hands trembled as she read and reread the message, her pulse racing with a mixture of fear and anger. Using her kid? Did he truly believe she had somehow orchestrated this entire situation? She glanced back toward the economy cabin, where Nathan was now demonstrating how to fold a paper airplane to a younger boy sitting across the aisle, completely oblivious to the storm brewing around him. Evelyn wanted to shield him from all of this, to protect his innocence and his pure intentions from the bitter hatred of a man too blinded by grief and pride to see the truth. Evelyn leaned back, pressing her hand against her forehead as memories of that long, grueling surgery flooded her mind. She remembered the tension in the operating room, the way every second had been a fight to keep Alyssa's fragile heart beating. She remembered Victor pacing the waiting room afterward, demanding answers and refusing to listen to reason. No matter how many times Evelyn had explained the inherent risks of such a complex procedure, it had never been enough. In his eyes, Evelyn had failed him, and he was determined to destroy her for it. As the memories threatened to overwhelm her, another message popped up on her screen, this time from Linda Parker, her attorney and longtime friend. "Hey, just a heads up. Langston's been talking to some media outlets. Seems like he's trying to spin your son's story as a PR stunt to cover up his accusations. We need to get ahead of this. Call me as soon as you land." Evelyn's jaw tightened, anger bubbling up beneath her calm exterior. How dare he try to manipulate something so innocent and genuine into another weapon against her? It was clear now that Victor's vendetta wasn't just about Alyssa. It was about power and control, about refusing to accept that Evelyn had done everything possible to save his daughter. The reality was that his empire was crumbling, with allegations of embezzlement and financial misconduct circling him like vultures. The timing couldn't be a coincidence. He was using her and Nathan's viral moment as a scapegoat to distract from his own downfall. Taking a shaky breath, Evelyn forced herself to think rationally. Panic would do no good. She needed to protect Nathan both from the media frenzy and from the poisonous narrative Victor was weaving. At that moment, a flight attendant approached with a gentle smile. "Ma'am, we just wanted to let you know that the captain has received word. There's quite a crowd at the gate. It looks like media and some curious onlookers. We're coordinating with ground security to make sure you and your son can exit safely." Evelyn nodded gratefully, managing a tight smile despite the knot in her throat. "Thank you. Can you make sure my son doesn't get overwhelmed? I'd like to exit quietly if possible." The flight attendant nodded with understanding and moved away to make the necessary arrangements. Evelyn's heart ached at the thought of Nathan facing cameras and shouting questions, especially when he had no idea what was happening or why people cared so much. He was just a boy who wanted to be kind, And now that simple goodness was being twisted into something ugly by a man too bitter to see the truth. At that moment, her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Samuel Blackwell. Swallowing her anxiety, Evelyn answered, her voice steady but strained. Samuel. His tone was calm and reassuring. Evelyn, I've seen what's happening. Don't worry. We're already preparing a statement to counter Langston's claims. I've also got my PR team on standby to address any negative press. We're going to handle this. Your son's story deserves to stay pure and untouched by all this mess. Evelyn couldn't help but feel a wave of relief. Thank you, Samuel. I hate that Nathan might get caught in the crossfire. He has no idea any of this is happening. Samuel paused before replying, his voice softer. We'll protect him, that's my promise. I know this is hard, but the world needs his story to stay real, untainted by anger or hate. Let's keep focusing on the kindness he's inspiring. We'll meet you at the gate with security and make sure you both get out safely. Evelyn whispered her gratitude, fighting back tears of exhaustion and frustration. After ending the call, she took a few moments to steady herself before getting up to check on Nathan. Walking down the aisle, Evelyn found him still immersed in conversation with Leo, showing off a drawing of a rocket he had sketched in the margins of his book. Leo gave Evelyn a nod of reassurance as she approached. Everything okay? He asked quietly. Evelyn forced a smile and nodded. Just dealing with a little turbulence on the ground, she said wryly, brushing Nathan's hair with her hand. Hey, buddy, she said softly, kneeling to his level. When we land, there might be a lot of people outside. They might have cameras and ask questions, but don't worry. I'll be with you the whole time. Nathan frowned, clearly confused. Why would they want to talk to us? Evelyn hesitated, unsure how much to explain. They heard about what you did. The nice thing with your seat. People are really interested in your story. Just stick close to me, okay? Nathan nodded slowly, not entirely understanding, but trusting his mom without question. Evelyn couldn't help but feel grateful that, despite the chaos swirling around them, her son remained blissfully unaware of the darker undercurrents. For now, she just needed to keep him safe and shield his innocent heart from the harsh realities of the world. As the plane began its descent, Evelyn knew one thing with absolute certainty. No matter what storm awaited them on the ground, she would protect Nathan's light from being overshadowed by bitterness and greed. As the plane touched down at Los Angeles International Airport, Evelyn felt a strange, hollow feeling in the pit of her stomach. The familiar hum of engines winding down and the clatter of overhead compartments opening seemed almost distant, muffled by the swirl of anxiety that had gripped her since receiving Victor Langston's hateful message. She stole a glance at Nathan, still chatting animatedly with Leo about space missions and rocket launches, completely oblivious to the whirlwind awaiting them outside. Evelyn forced herself to smile as Leo gave her an encouraging nod, silently reminding her that she wasn't alone in this. As passengers slowly began to disembark, Evelyn noticed one of the flight attendants discreetly motioning for her to wait. A glance out the small oval window revealed clusters of people gathered at the terminal windows, cameras flashing and microphones poised. Her heart clenched as she spotted at least 3 news vans parked haphazardly near the gate, reporters standing with expressions of anticipation, clearly preparing to pounce. Evelyn's pulse quickened. How had this spiraled so quickly? Only hours ago, they were just another mother and son heading off on a long-awaited family trip, and now it felt as though the entire country had zeroed in on them. The flight attendant approached, her expression kind but slightly worried. Dr. Porter, we've arranged for you and your son to exit through a side ramp. Security will escort you to a private car. I just wanted to let you know that it might be a little chaotic outside. Evelyn gave a grateful nod, trying to keep her expression calm. Thank you, she whispered, glancing at Nathan to make sure he wasn't overhearing too much. As the passengers around them slowly filed out, Evelyn made the decision to stay seated, giving the bustling crowd a chance to clear before they made their move. She knew that the second they stepped off the plane, everything would change. Samuel had promised to handle the media, but even his influence couldn't completely shield them from the onslaught of questions and accusations that were undoubtedly being fueled by Langston's manipulations. As she waited, her phone buzzed with another message, this time from Linda, her attorney. Landing soon? Media already broadcasting. Be prepared for questions about Langston's allegations. Stay calm. We're working on an official statement. Evelyn swallowed the bitter taste of fear, forcing herself to focus on Nathan's safety above all else. She couldn't let him see her panic, couldn't let him sense the suffocating dread that pressed against her chest like a vice. Finally, as the last of the passengers disembarked, the flight attendant signaled that it was time. Evelyn took a deep breath and knelt down beside Nathan, brushing his hair back gently. Hey, buddy. She began softly, trying to maintain a light tone. We're going to leave through a special exit. There might be some people outside who want to ask questions or take pictures, but I want you to stay close to me, okay? Nathan looked up at her, confusion flickering in his bright green eyes. Why do they want to talk to us, Mom? He asked, frowning. Evelyn hesitated, trying to find the right words. They just saw your video online, and a lot of people were really moved by how kind you were. Sometimes when something like that happens, people want to know more about it. But it's nothing to worry about. I'm right here with you. Nathan nodded, though Evelyn could see his mind working through the oddness of it all. Okay, he said simply, trusting her. Completely. Leo put a comforting hand on Nathan's shoulder. You're going to be just fine, buddy. Just stick with your mom and don't worry about the cameras. They're just noisy boxes that like to flash a lot. He joked, making Nathan giggle. With their carry-on securely in hand, they made their way to the back exit, where a narrow metal ramp awaited. A pair of security guards nodded in acknowledgement, guiding them through a secured pathway that bypassed the main terminal. Evelyn caught a glimpse of the bustling crowd just beyond the glass partitions. Dozens of reporters jostling for position, their microphones aimed like spears, shouting questions that bounced off the walls and echoed in the vast, hollow space. Just the sight of them sent a chill through her spine, but she squared her shoulders and kept moving, reminding herself that Nathan's well-being came first. As they approached the private car, Evelyn spotted a familiar face. Samuel Blackwell, impeccably dressed as always, his expression a perfect blend of calm authority and genuine concern. He greeted them with a reassuring smile, opening the car door himself and guiding Nathan inside with a friendly pat on the shoulder. Once they were safely inside the plush, soundproof vehicle, Samuel slid in next to Evelyn and offered a sympathetic glance. They're circling like vultures out there, he muttered, his voice low and composed. Evelyn nodded, sinking into the leather seat as she finally allowed herself to breathe. It's worse than I expected, she admitted. Langston's accusations have already taken root. Some of the media are questioning whether we staged the whole thing to rehabilitate my reputation. Samuel's jaw tightened, his normally unshakable demeanor briefly giving way to frustration. We're going to fight this head on, he promised. My PR team is already crafting a response, emphasizing that the video was spontaneous and completely unplanned. We're focusing on the outpouring of support rather than engaging directly with the smear campaign. Let Langston dig his own grave. His financial scandal is gaining traction, and once that breaks wide open, he won't have the credibility to challenge your integrity. Evelyn glanced back at Nathan, who was distracted by the small screen embedded in the car's seat, playing a cartoon about astronauts. For a moment, she let herself relax, grateful that Nathan remained blissfully unaware of the severity of the situation. I just hate that he's being dragged into this, Evelyn whispered, wiping at her eyes before any tears could fully form. Samuel gave her a reassuring pat on the hand. We'll make sure his story stays pure. People want to believe in kindness. Your son's action resonated with millions. We won't let one bitter man destroy that. As they navigated through the labyrinth of airport service roads, Samuel received a call and excused himself to step outside the car for a moment. Evelyn watched him through the tinted window, his stance commanding and assertive as he discussed strategy with his team. Just as Samuel returned, Evelyn's phone vibrated again, this time with a message from Leo. "You guys okay? Saw the news, looks crazy out there. Proud of Nathan. Stay strong." Evelyn smiled softly, grateful for the unexpected support that Leo had offered from the moment they met. As the car approached the hotel Samuel had arranged for them, a discreet, comfortable place far from the media frenzy, Evelyn couldn't help but reflect on how quickly life had changed. Just that morning, they had been preparing for a simple family visit, and now they were at the center of a national storm. But even in the chaos, she knew that Nathan's kindness was at the heart of it all, untouched, unspoiled, and profoundly genuine. She took his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze, and Nathan glanced up, giving her one of his effortless, bright smiles. In that moment, Evelyn knew that whatever happened next, they would face it together. Nathan's act of kindness might have set off a whirlwind, but it had also sparked a movement, one that no amount of bitterness or lies could ever extinguish. Evelyn sat at the small, elegantly appointed hotel desk, the city lights of Los Angeles twinkling through the window behind her, casting dancing reflections on the polished wood. The room was quiet except for the gentle hum of the air conditioning and the faint sounds of traffic far below. Nathan had fallen asleep almost instantly after they arrived, his small body curled up under the hotel's crisp white duvet, still clutching his beloved astronomy book. Evelyn couldn't help but watch him sleep for a moment, her heart aching with both pride and fear. How could one small act of kindness ignite such a storm? She couldn't help but wonder how long this unexpected fame would last, and how much of it would turn sour if Victor Langston's lies gained traction. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts, and she moved quietly across the room, opening it just enough to see Samuel's reassuring face. He held a takeout bag and gave her a gentle smile. "Thought you might not have eaten," he whispered. Evelyn stepped aside to let him in, grateful for the gesture, and they moved to the small sitting area near the window, careful not to disturb Nathan's sleep. Samuel unpacked the containers, the savory aroma of stir-fried vegetables and teriyaki chicken wafting through the room. Evelyn realized just how hungry she was as her stomach gave an embarrassing growl, and Samuel raised an amused eyebrow. "You need to take care of yourself, too," he said softly, handing her a pair of chopsticks. She gave him a tired but appreciative smile, taking a bite and savoring the warmth. As they ate in companionable silence, Samuel pulled out his tablet, tapping the screen a few times before turning it to face her. "You need to see this," he said, his tone cautious but supportive. On the screen was a news clip. One of the major networks had picked up the video of Nathan's act of kindness. But it wasn't just the original story anymore. The narrative had already started to twist, with commentators debating whether Evelyn had staged the whole incident to clean up her professional image. Evelyn's jaw tightened, her hands shaking as she paused mid-bite. "They're really accusing me of using my son to cover up a medical scandal?" she whispered, disbelief and fury warring in her voice. Samuel nodded, his expression serious. "Langston's feeding them that angle, claiming that you orchestrated the whole thing to distract from his allegations. Unfortunately, some outlets are running with it because controversy sells." Evelyn closed her eyes, fighting the rush of anger that threatened to overwhelm her. She couldn't believe how warped the story had become in such a short time. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," she murmured, her shoulders slumping. Samuel reached out, his hand covering hers on the table. "We're not going to let this stand. I've already arranged for Linda to make an official statement to the press, defending your character and emphasizing that the video was completely spontaneous. More importantly, we're going to shift the focus back to the positive impact your son's story is having. Langston can scream all he wants. Once his financial scandal blows wide open, his credibility will crumble. We just need to hold the line." Evelyn took a deep breath, allowing his calm resolve to steady her own nerves. "I just hate that Nathan's kindness, something so pure, is being dragged through the mud because of one bitter man," she whispered. Samuel gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "That's why we're not going to let Langston control the story. Your son did something beautiful, and people felt that. The vast majority of reactions are positive. People are sharing their own stories of kindness because they were inspired by Nathan. That's the real story here, and we're going to keep pushing that message. He paused, his gaze turning more thoughtful. Actually, I have an idea. We need to put Nathan's voice at the center of this. Not a PR statement from us, just him, honestly talking about why he did what he did. Something raw and real. Let the world see the boy behind the act. Evelyn hesitated, instinctively protective. He's just a kid, Samuel. I don't want him to feel pressured or overwhelmed. Samuel nodded with complete understanding. Of course, we'll approach it gently. If he feels comfortable, we'll record a short, candid interview. Nothing scripted, just him sharing his thoughts. If he's not up for it, we won't force it. But I believe that if people hear directly from him, they'll understand that no one orchestrated anything. He just did what felt right in his heart. The idea made sense, and Evelyn knew that shielding Nathan completely might actually make things worse. If they stayed silent, Langston's narrative would have room to grow unchecked. But if Nathan's genuine voice cut through the noise, it could dismantle the lies before they took root. Okay, she agreed softly, her mind already spinning with how to prepare Nathan without making him feel pressured. We'll talk to him in the morning and see how he feels about it. Samuel gave her an encouraging nod, his gaze steady and confident. Whatever happens, we're on your side. You're not alone in this, Evelyn. Gratitude swelled in her chest, and she offered a genuine, tired smile. Thank you, she whispered. Just as they finished eating, Evelyn's phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Grace, the pregnant woman who had taken Nathan's seat. I just saw the news. Please let me know if there's anything I can do. Nathan's kindness changed my entire day. I owe him so much. Evelyn smiled faintly, touched by the woman's support. She typed a quick reply, reassuring Grace that everything would be fine, and thanking her for reaching out. As Samuel gathered the takeout containers and disposed of them neatly, Evelyn couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of determination. She wasn't going to let Langston's bitterness overshadow her son's light. As she glanced once more at Nathan, peacefully asleep, she made a silent vow to protect not just him, but also the message his kindness had sparked. The next morning, when Nathan woke up, he was greeted with the sight of Samuel sitting at the small hotel dining table, sipping coffee, and Evelyn gently stroking his hair. Morning, sleepyhead, Evelyn greeted, her voice soft and soothing. Nathan rubbed his eyes and yawned, blinking at them curiously. Why is everyone up so early? He mumbled. Evelyn exchanged a quick glance with Samuel before kneeling next to his bed. Buddy, we need to talk to you about something important, she began, her tone gentle. Nathan sat up, still groggy but attentive. You know how that video of you giving up your seat got really popular? She continued, and Nathan nodded. Well, some people, like Mr. Langston, are saying mean things about me and trying to make it look like we planned the whole thing to make me look good. Nathan's face scrunched up in confusion. But that's not true. I just wanted to help the lady. Evelyn smiled warmly, brushing his hair back. I know, sweetheart, and so do a lot of people. But Samuel thought it might be a good idea if you shared your side of the story, just like you did with me. You don't have to if you don't want to, but it might help people understand. Nathan considered it for a moment, his brow furrowing thoughtfully, then he gave a small, resolute nod. I want to do it. I don't want people to think you made me do something. It was just me. I wanted to help. Evelyn felt a surge of pride, and Samuel gave her a knowing smile. We'll make it simple, Samuel assured him. Just talk like you would to your friends. No pressure, okay? Nathan gave a determined nod, and Evelyn squeezed his hand gently, grateful for his courage. They set up a small camera in the cozy corner of the room, and with Samuel guiding him with gentle questions, Nathan spoke plainly and honestly about what he had done and why. His voice was earnest, unguarded, and completely transparent. I just saw her and thought she looked really tired, and I remembered how my mom always says that being nice to people makes their day better. I didn't know it was a big deal. I just wanted to help, he explained with a small, thoughtful shrug. As they finished recording, Evelyn knew that this small, heartfelt message would be the key to restoring the truth. No anger, no blame, just pure honesty from a boy who simply wanted to make someone's day a little easier. And as Samuel promised to handle the release, Evelyn finally felt the tension in her chest begin to ease. No matter how loud the world got, Nathan's heart would always speak louder. Samuel watched the video file finish uploading, his fingers tapping lightly on the edge of his phone as he coordinated with his PR team to ensure the message reached the right outlets. They chose a soft release on social media first, wanting it to feel organic and genuine rather than a manufactured response. As the video went live, Evelyn sat beside Nathan on the hotel bed, her arm around his shoulders while he absent-mindedly flipped through his astronomy book, more interested in the constellations than in the chaos swirling around his name. Samuel gave her a reassuring nod, indicating that the video was now in the hands of the public. Within minutes, the initial trickle of reactions turned into a flood, comments streaming in faster than Evelyn could read. "This kid is a pure soul," one user wrote, followed by, "It's sad that the world is so cynical that a simple act of kindness gets questioned." Another read, "Nathan's words just melted my heart. He's everything we should strive to be." Evelyn exhaled slowly, feeling some of the pressure finally lift off her chest. Beside her, Nathan looked up curiously, sensing the change in her mood. "Is everything okay now?" he asked innocently, his small hand still clutching his book. Evelyn smiled and kissed his forehead. "You did amazing, sweetheart. People are starting to understand that you just wanted to be kind." Nathan nodded, as if that made perfect sense, and then went back to tracing star patterns on the page, his mind blissfully distant from the digital whirlwind enveloping his name. But while the truth was making its way across social media elsewhere, the storm raged on. News stations that had previously run stories questioning Evelyn's motives began scrambling to pivot, reaching out for comment or clarification, trying to save face. Meanwhile, in the dimly lit office of a high-rise building in downtown Chicago, Victor Langston watched the video with a sneer of contempt. His hands clenched around his phone as he watched Nathan's honest, unguarded words replay on the screen. "I just wanted to help." The boy's sincerity burned like acid, eating away at the narrative Victor had tried to spin. Frustrated, he tossed his phone onto his cluttered desk, papers scattering in every direction. He glanced at the stack of legal documents detailing his own crumbling financial empire, fraud investigations, bank statements with glaring discrepancies, and subpoenas he had been trying to dodge for weeks. His power and influence were slipping through his fingers like sand, and this simple, unassuming boy had just made his desperate attempt at a diversion look both cruel and absurd. As his lawyer's voice crackled through the speakerphone, reminding him that time was running out before the SEC came knocking, Victor cursed under his breath, realizing that the public sentiment was no longer on his side. No one wanted to believe that a child could be that genuinely selfless without some ulterior motive. Yet, despite his machinations, Nathan's truth had struck a chord too pure to corrupt. Back at the hotel, Samuel's phone pinged with notification after notification as major networks began picking up Nathan's response video. A popular news host praised the boy's unguarded sincerity live on air, admitting that the original skepticism had been misplaced. Social media was now buzzing with messages of support, and the hashtag #BeLikeNathan was trending worldwide. People were sharing their own stories of spontaneous kindness, inspired by the boy's simple yet profound decision to put someone else's comfort above his own. It was more than just a story now, it was a movement. Schools across the country began adopting kindness challenges, encouraging students to perform small acts of goodwill and share how it made them feel. A group of teachers in San Diego organized a Nathan Day to celebrate the power of compassion, while a middle school in New York City used his story as part of a lesson on empathy and community responsibility. Evelyn watched these developments unfold with a cautious sense of hope. It was still surreal to see her son's face and name everywhere, but knowing that his kindness was planting seeds of change softened the sting of earlier doubts. Samuel glanced at her as he continued to monitor the rapidly evolving media landscape. "You see?" he said, offering her a proud smile. "I knew people would see through the lies once they heard it from Nathan himself. It's like trying to put out a wildfire with a cup of water. The truth always burns brighter." Evelyn smiled gratefully, feeling the relief settle deeper into her bones. But just as she was starting to relax, her phone rang. It was Linda. Evelyn immediately picked up, her pulse quickening with residual anxiety. "Hey, Linda," she greeted cautiously. "Did you see the response?" Linda's voice sounded surprisingly upbeat, a far cry from the strained tone of the past few days. "I did, and it's working. People are rallying behind Nathan, and it's making Langston look like a bitter old man grasping at straws, but that's not all." Evelyn's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Linda hesitated for just a moment before dropping the news. Federal investigators just issued a warrant for Langston's arrest. His business partner cut a deal and provided evidence that Langston was orchestrating a massive embezzlement scheme. The story's breaking right now. It's over for him. Evelyn felt a surge of satisfaction well up from deep inside her chest. She closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment of victory, as Linda continued to explain how Langston's allies were already distancing themselves, scrambling to avoid the fallout. "This means he'll be too busy trying to save himself to come after you any longer," Linda assured. "You and Nathan are in the clear." Samuel, seeing Evelyn's face light up with relief, raised an inquisitive brow. She covered the mouthpiece and whispered, "Langston's being arrested." His fraud scheme fell apart. Samuel nodded approvingly, clearly pleased that the dark cloud had finally lifted. Once Evelyn ended the call, she leaned back, the tension visibly draining from her shoulders. "It's finally over," she breathed, unable to hold back the small laugh that escaped her lips. Samuel joined in with a chuckle, giving her a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "I told you the truth would prevail. Now it's time to focus on what really matters, making sure Nathan's kindness keeps lighting up the world." Evelyn glanced at her son, still blissfully absorbed in his book, his world unmarred by the chaos that had threatened to engulf them. She couldn't help but marvel at how his small, selfless act had not only unraveled a powerful man's malicious scheme, but had also sparked a wave of kindness that was sweeping the nation. Samuel's phone buzzed again, a message from the media coordinator confirming that several news outlets had already retracted their previous statements questioning Evelyn's intentions. They were now running stories focusing on the positive impact of Nathan's kindness and the nationwide movement it had inspired. Relief washed over Evelyn like a tidal wave. She felt her phone vibrate with a new message. This one from Grace. "Just saw Nathan's new video. Tears in my eyes. That boy is a light in this world. Thank you for raising him to be so kind." Evelyn couldn't hold back a proud, grateful smile. She sent a quick reply, thanking Grace for her support and feeling grateful that kindness had not only changed lives, but had also triumphed over bitterness and spite. As Samuel and Evelyn shared a knowing look, they both understood that this victory was more than just clearing her name. It was a reaffirmation that no matter how ruthless the world could be, genuine compassion still had the power to break through even the darkest of storms. And in that quiet moment, as the city lights flickered outside their window, Evelyn knew that Nathan's first-class heart had not only survived the whirlwind, but had emerged as a beacon of hope for everyone who still believed that kindness could change the world. The weeks that followed felt like a dream, a whirlwind of positivity and resilience blossoming from the ashes of a near disaster. Nathan's story became more than just a fleeting moment of viral fame. It transformed into a movement, a genuine wave of kindness that swept across the country and far beyond. The Kindness Ripple Project, spearheaded by Samuel Blackwell and inspired by Nathan's innocent, heartfelt decision, took on a life of its own, Schools from coast to coast adopted the curriculum that Samuel and his team developed, emphasizing empathy, compassion, and the simple acts that could transform someone's day. Teachers reported astonishing changes. Students who had once been quiet and withdrawn were suddenly finding reasons to engage with their peers. Anti-bullying initiatives became less of a mandate and more of a collective commitment, driven not by rules but by a newfound sense of community. Social media, often criticized for its toxic tendencies, became an unexpected ally in spreading messages of hope and humanity. The hashtag #BeLikeNathan continued to trend, filled with stories of everyday heroes inspired by the boy who gave up his first-class seat. One young girl in Seattle wrote a letter to Nathan, telling him how she had been scared to stand up to bullies at her school. But after hearing his story, she had found the courage to defend a classmate. A firefighter in New York City shared how he'd been inspired to organize a neighborhood cleanup project after seeing how one small act of kindness could spark a monumental change. Even a group of teenagers in Atlanta started a kindness patrol, randomly visiting nursing homes and animal shelters to offer help and companionship. Each story was unique, but they all echoed the same sentiment. Kindness wasn't just an idea, it was an action. And it could be as simple as giving up something you value to make someone else feel seen and valued. Evelyn watched in quiet awe as her son's story continued to ripple outwards, touching lives and changing hearts. Her own life had settled into a kind of cautious normalcy, the dark shadow of Langston's accusations finally lifting as his fraudulent empire crumbled under federal scrutiny. The hospital where she worked had issued a formal statement reaffirming their confidence in her medical expertise and ethical integrity, and colleagues who had once hesitated to approach her now offered warm congratulations and words of support. It felt as if the world had taken a collective breath and exhaled relief, finally recognizing that truth had won out over deception. Still, Evelyn remained acutely aware of the fragile balance between protecting Nathan's innocence and allowing him to embrace his newfound role as an ambassador of kindness. Samuel, ever the thoughtful guardian of the project, made sure that every public appearance and media engagement was done on Nathan's terms, keeping him grounded and sheltered from the more overwhelming aspects of fame. Though the offers poured in, television interviews, documentary proposals, even book deals, Samuel and Evelyn remained steadfast in their commitment to keeping Nathan's experience genuine and positive, never allowing it to be exploited or twisted into something hollow and commercial. One bright Saturday morning, Evelyn and Nathan made their way to the community center where Leo worked. Leo had texted earlier that week with an invitation to a special event that the kids had planned. A Kindness Day celebration featuring stories, songs, and even a small ceremony to honor Nathan and others who had made a difference. As they approached the entrance, they could already hear the laughter and cheerful chatter spilling out onto the sidewalk. Brightly colored banners reading Kindness Day hung above the door, and children were buzzing around, some wearing handmade capes with hearts drawn on the back, others holding signs with phrases like "Kindness is cool" and "Be like Nathan." As they stepped inside, a wave of applause erupted, and Nathan's cheeks flushed pink, his shy smile peeking out as he gave a small wave. Leo approached with his usual easygoing grin, clapping Nathan on the shoulder. "You made it, superstar," he teased. "The kids have been talking about this all week. You've got quite the fan club." Evelyn couldn't help but laugh, feeling a deep warmth settle in her chest as she saw how genuinely happy Nathan looked, surrounded by friends and new admirers alike. The event began with a series of short stories read by children who shared moments when they had chosen kindness over conflict, helping a new student feel welcome, sharing lunch with someone who forgot theirs, or standing up to teasing on the playground. Nathan sat cross-legged on the floor among the kids, listening intently, his eyes bright with interest and pride. Evelyn stood at the back with Samuel and Leo, her heart swelling with gratitude for the way the community had embraced Nathan and nurtured his spirit instead of exploiting it. Leo leaned over and whispered, "You know, he's got that rare ability to make people feel seen." Even the rougher kids at the center have softened since they heard his story. It's like he reminded them that they don't have to act tough all the time. Evelyn nodded, knowing exactly what he meant. Nathan didn't just talk about kindness, he lived it, And that authenticity was what made his story resonate so deeply. After the stories, it was time for a few of the older kids to perform a song they had written, inspired by Nathan's actions. The lyrics were simple but powerful, speaking about how one small gesture could brighten someone's darkest day and how kindness wasn't about making yourself look good, but about truly caring for others. Nathan beamed throughout the performance, clapping along with the rhythm, and when it was over, the entire room erupted into cheers. Samuel stepped forward and called Nathan to the front, presenting him with a small trophy shaped like a heart. The plaque read, "Kindness Champion for inspiring hearts everywhere." Nathan looked at it with wide eyes, his fingers tracing the engraving, and Samuel gave him an encouraging nod to say a few words. Taking a deep breath, Nathan looked out at the crowd and spoke with the unfiltered honesty that had captured the world's attention. "I didn't do anything special," he began, glancing down at the trophy. "I just saw someone who needed help and did what I thought was right. My mom always says that being nice isn't about getting something back. It's just about being a good person. I think if everyone did one nice thing every day, the world would feel a lot happier." The simplicity of his words cut through the room like a beam of sunlight, and applause erupted once more, accompanied by a few happy tears from parents and volunteers alike. Afterward, as the event wound down and the kids started playing games in the courtyard, Leo handed Nathan a rocket kit wrapped in colorful paper. "I figured you'd like to build something that flies as high as your spirit," he joked, ruffling Nathan's hair. Nathan's eyes lit up as he carefully unwrapped the gift, his grin widening as he saw the intricate model rocket inside. "Thanks, Leo," he exclaimed, already inspecting the parts with eager hands. Evelyn watched them with a heart full of pride, realizing that Nathan had not only inspired strangers, but had built lasting connections through his kindness. She knew the road ahead might still hold challenges, and fame was a fickle creature that could turn on them in an instant. But for now, in this little community center filled with love and laughter, she knew that Nathan's message had found a home in people's hearts. A reminder that goodness wasn't just a fleeting trend, but a timeless, enduring force. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky with hues of pink and amber, Evelyn wrapped her arm around her son's shoulders and kissed the top of his head. "You did good, kiddo," she whispered. Nathan looked up at her, his eyes bright with curiosity. "Do you think more people will start being nice now?" he asked earnestly. Evelyn smiled, giving his shoulder a gentle squeeze. "I think you've already changed a lot of hearts, Nathan. And as long as you keep showing people what kindness looks like, they'll keep wanting to follow your lead." Nathan nodded thoughtfully, his gaze drifting up to the sky as if looking for distant stars, dreaming of rockets and galaxies and a world where compassion could soar as high as his imagination. Evelyn knew deep down that no matter how turbulent life became, Nathan's first-class heart would always guide him, and those who followed his example, toward a brighter, kinder future. The momentum of the Kindness Ripple project showed no signs of slowing down, and Nathan's story continued to resonate far beyond the bounds of his own neighborhood. As the days turned into weeks, news outlets from all over the world picked up on the phenomenon, praising the boy whose selfless decision to give up his first-class seat sparked a movement grounded in empathy and compassion. Schools across the globe were hosting Be Like Nathan Days, where students performed acts of kindness and shared stories of how they made a difference. Letters and emails flooded Evelyn's inbox, messages from parents grateful for how Nathan's story had inspired their children, teachers recounting how classroom dynamics shifted from competition to cooperation, and even public figures sending words of admiration for how a single act had reignited hope in such a fractured world. Evelyn was overwhelmed but endlessly proud, doing her best to protect Nathan from the inevitable pressure while still allowing him to embrace the positive impact he had made. Samuel, always at the forefront of managing public interest, maintained a delicate balance between preserving Nathan's childhood and supporting the growing movement. He declined numerous interview requests on their behalf, firmly insisting that the story should focus on the message rather than the boy himself. When Evelyn confided her concerns about the sustainability of such a massive movement, Samuel reassured her that the message was already bigger than any one person. Kindness doesn't belong to Nathan alone, he explained one evening over coffee at the community center. He just reminded people of something they had forgotten. Now it's up to them to carry it forward. His words were comforting, but Evelyn couldn't help but feel a lingering worry that the world's expectations might one day weigh too heavily on her son's small shoulders. Meanwhile, Nathan remained remarkably grounded, blissfully unaware of the deeper intricacies of the movement he had sparked. To him, the most important part of his newfound fame was how it made people smile and be nicer to each other. One afternoon, as Evelyn sat reviewing patient files at the dining table, Nathan bounced into the room holding his tablet. "Mom, look!" he exclaimed, thrusting the screen toward her. She squinted at the video playing a group of students in London holding a kindness rally, their shirts emblazoned with #BeLikeNathan. They were handing out handwritten notes to strangers on the street, each message containing a compliment or words of encouragement. Evelyn's heart swelled as she watched the students laugh and hug the recipients of their notes, the simple acts clearly brightening their day. "They're doing it because of you, honey," she said softly, giving Nathan a kiss on the forehead. Nathan just grinned, looking at her with pure, unguarded joy. "I just wanted to help one person," he said thoughtfully, as if still trying to wrap his mind around how his small act had grown into something so enormous. "It's kinda cool that it made other people want to be nice, too." Evelyn hugged him, whispering, "You're doing more good than you'll ever know." Despite the positivity surrounding them, not everyone was on board with the movement. A handful of skeptics and critics began to emerge, some accusing Samuel of exploiting Nathan's story to advance his own philanthropic reputation, others claiming that the entire narrative was an exaggerated feel-good story designed to distract from societal issues that needed more serious attention. Evelyn couldn't help but feel a pang of anxiety whenever she saw such comments. Though they were vastly outnumbered by messages of support, the few cynical voices always seemed to cut deeper, making her question whether she was doing enough to protect Nathan from the darker side of fame. Samuel, sensing her growing apprehension, called her one evening with a plan. "We're going to do something unexpected," he said, with a touch of intrigue. "There's a benefit gala next month for the Kindness Ripple Project. Mostly supporters and community leaders, but we're inviting some critics too. Let them see firsthand that this isn't about fame or manipulation. It's about spreading good. If they see Nathan and the community together, it might just change their minds." Evelyn hesitated, but eventually agreed, knowing that shielding Nathan from every harsh word would only isolate him in the long run. Samuel assured her that he would handle all the logistics and ensure the environment was positive and welcoming. When the night of the gala arrived, the venue was nothing short of magical. Twinkling lights wrapped around elegant columns, while soft piano music drifted through the air, giving the room a warm, inviting ambience. Nathan looked dapper in his little navy suit, his messy hair combed just enough to look respectable without losing its boyish charm. Evelyn herself wore a simple, elegant dress in emerald green, her heart fluttering with both pride and anxiety. Samuel greeted them at the entrance, looking effortlessly sophisticated as always, and guided them through the room to where community leaders and volunteers were already gathering. The buzz of conversation filled the space, and Nathan was greeted like a local hero, adults and kids alike stopping to shake his hand or offer him words of encouragement. Leo was there too, grinning from ear to ear as he waved them over to a table covered with photo collages from various Kindness Ripple events across the country. Nathan was fascinated by the images: students planting community gardens, families holding donation drives, and even hospitals setting up kindness stations where visitors could write uplifting messages to patients and staff. As the evening progressed, Samuel took the stage to deliver his speech, acknowledging the incredible support the project had received and expressing gratitude to everyone who had contributed. "We're here tonight not just to celebrate one act of kindness, but to remind ourselves that compassion is contagious," he said with a calm, powerful voice. "Nathan's story lit the spark, but each of you here has kept it burning brighter than ever. Let's make kindness not just a moment, but a movement, a legacy that lasts. The audience erupted into applause, and Samuel gestured for Nathan to come up on stage. Though shy at first, Nathan walked up with his characteristic determination, giving Samuel a small nod before taking the microphone. I just I just did what I thought was nice, he said with his usual honesty, his eyes scanning the room. Sometimes people look like they're having a hard day, and I think if you can make it better, even a little bit, you should. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't know it would make people think so much about being kind, but I'm happy it did. His words, so simple yet so deeply genuine, melted away any lingering doubts in the room. Even the few skeptics present couldn't help but feel moved by the purity of his message. As the applause thundered, Evelyn couldn't help but wipe a tear from her cheek, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. Samuel, ever the strategist, leaned into the microphone and invited the audience to share their own stories of kindness, creating an impromptu session where people stood up to recount moments that had restored their faith in humanity. Story after story unfolded, an elderly man sharing how his neighbor fixed his broken porch, a young girl speaking of how her friends defended her from bullies, a mother recounting how a stranger covered her groceries when she was short on cash. Each tale added a layer to the powerful mosaic of human compassion that Nathan's story had reignited. Evelyn watched, feeling something profound settle into her bones. The realization that this wasn't just a fleeting trend, but a fundamental shift in how people perceived and valued small acts of goodness. Nathan wasn't just a symbol, he was a catalyst, a boy who had dared to care when most people wouldn't have even noticed. After the speeches, as the crowd mingled and shared stories, Evelyn took a moment to step outside onto the terrace, needing a breath of fresh air. Samuel joined her, his expression calm and thoughtful. "You know," he said quietly, leaning on the railing beside her, "I've seen a lot of causes take off and then fade. But this one, it's different. It's not just about the moment, it's about a mindset. Your son reminded people that kindness is within reach. He's changed something fundamental." Evelyn looked out at the city lights, a soft breeze lifting her hair. "Sometimes I worry it's too much for him," she admitted. Samuel gave her a reassuring smile. "He's stronger than you think. Besides, it's not just on his shoulders anymore. Kindness has caught on. He gave it a push, and now the world is carrying it forward." They stood in companionable silence, both knowing that despite the trials and challenges that had threatened to overshadow Nathan's heart, the world had chosen to embrace his light. Evelyn couldn't help but feel grateful, not just for the movement, but for the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. One small act that had blossomed into a global call to kindness. The following months unfolded like a breathtaking story of hope and renewal, as Nathan's story continued to ripple far beyond what anyone had ever imagined. The Kindness Ripple Project became not just a national phenomenon, but an international movement, inspiring people from every walk of life to take part in acts of compassion, both grand and small. News networks across the globe featured segments on communities transformed by the movement, where simple gestures of kindness had become everyday occurrences rather than rare exceptions. Cities adopted kindness weeks, where schools, businesses, and community centers collaborated to uplift those in need. Homeless shelters reported increased donations and volunteer participation, and nursing homes saw an influx of visitors simply wanting to share stories and offer companionship. In one heartwarming instance, a group of high school students in Tokyo formed a Be Like Nathan Club, dedicating their weekends to helping elderly residents with shopping and chores. An entire village in Kenya organized a community cleanup, inspired by Nathan's belief that small efforts could make a big difference. And perhaps most surprisingly, corporations known for their ruthless efficiency began adopting kindness initiatives among employees, recognizing that fostering empathy led to healthier, more positive work environments. The world was not just watching, it was changing, and at the center of it all was a young boy who had given up his seat on a plane without ever expecting anything in return. Evelyn often found herself overwhelmed by the sheer scale of it. Every day brought new stories of kindness, new messages of gratitude, and new initiatives sparked by the simple message of one little boy. Despite the magnitude of the movement, Nathan remained humbly grounded, still more interested in his model rockets and space books than in being seen as a hero. Samuel continued to guide the project with a careful hand, always ensuring that Nathan's well-being remained the priority, and never allowing the mission to overshadow the boy's childhood. Leo and the kids at the community center became even more involved, hosting regular kindness clinics where children of all ages brainstormed ways to make their neighborhoods better. Whether through litter cleanup, helping elderly neighbors, or simply being mindful of how they treated each other. Evelyn often stopped by after work, watching Nathan enthusiastically teach younger kids how to build rockets while also subtly weaving in lessons about looking out for one another. It was as if kindness had become second nature, not just for Nathan, but for everyone touched by his story. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft shades of amber and rose, Evelyn received a call from Samuel. His voice, though calm, held a hint of excitement. "Evelyn," he began, "you might want to sit down for this." She complied, curiosity piqued, and listened as he relayed the news. The United Nations had reached out to the Kindness Ripple Project, wanting to honor Nathan with a Humanitarian Youth Award at their annual ceremony in New York City. Evelyn's heart skipped a beat, stunned by the gravity of the recognition. "They want to acknowledge his influence on fostering global compassion," Samuel explained. "And they want you both there to accept the award in person." Evelyn was speechless, her thoughts racing between pride and uncertainty. That's incredible," she managed to say, trying to grasp the reality of it. "But do you think it's too much for him?" Samuel hesitated, thoughtful as always. "We'll make sure it's done with care. I think it could be an amazing experience for him, showing him just how far his message has traveled. But it has to be his choice." After ending the call, Evelyn sat in thoughtful silence before finding Nathan in his room, meticulously applying decals to his latest model rocket. She knelt beside him, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. "Hey, buddy, there's something I want to talk to you about," she said softly. Nathan glanced up, his curious eyes attentive. "What's up, Mom?" Taking a deep breath, Evelyn explained the invitation, simplifying the details so he wouldn't feel overwhelmed. "They just want to say thank you for being so kind and inspiring so many people," she explained. "It's a big deal, but if it makes you uncomfortable, we don't have to do it." Nathan thought about it for a moment, his face scrunching up in concentration. "Would I get to talk to people about being nice?" he asked. Evelyn smiled gently. "Yes, you would. You'd get to share why you think kindness is important." Nathan nodded resolutely. "Then I want to go. I think maybe if more people hear it, they'll remember to be nice too." Evelyn hugged him tightly, tears welling in her eyes, grateful once more for his pure, untainted heart. The day of the ceremony came, and Nathan was dressed in a little navy suit, his shoes freshly polished, looking both dapper and slightly nervous. Samuel, Leo, and Grace accompanied them, the small group forming a tight circle of support around the young boy as they made their way through the bustling halls of the United Nations building. When they finally entered the Grand Assembly Room, filled with delegates from every corner of the globe, Evelyn couldn't help but feel a swell of emotion. Her little boy, standing before the world as a symbol of hope. The Secretary General introduced Nathan with a short speech, recounting the story of his selfless act on the "wanted anything in return? I just wanted to make someone happy." I didn't know it would make so many people think about being nice, but I'm really glad it did. I hope that everyone can remember that being nice isn't hard. It's just paying attention to other people and caring about them. The applause that followed was thunderous, a standing ovation from hundreds of dignitaries, activists, and global leaders who had seen too much conflict and longed for even a fraction of that pure, hopeful spirit. Tears streamed down Evelyn's face, and even Samuel, who was rarely moved to tears, discreetly wiped his eyes. Nathan stood there, looking slightly puzzled by the overwhelming response, but he smiled nonetheless, giving a small wave before stepping back. As the ceremony concluded and they made their way out, journalists bombarded them with questions, but Samuel shielded Nathan from the frenzy, keeping the focus on the message rather than the boy himself. Grace hugged Evelyn tightly, her own eyes glistening. "He's amazing," she whispered. "You've raised an extraordinary young man." Evelyn just smiled through her tears, feeling nothing but pride and gratitude. That night, as they returned to the hotel, Nathan remained unaware of the monumental impact he had made once again. As he curled up under the hotel blankets, holding his little trophy, a simple crystal heart engraved with the words, "Champion of Kindness," Evelyn sat beside him, stroking his hair as his eyes drooped with sleep. "Are you proud of me, Mom?" he mumbled softly. Evelyn kissed his forehead. "More than words can say," she whispered. "You've changed the world just by being yourself." As he drifted off, Evelyn couldn't help but think about how his light had pierced through so much darkness, reminding the world of something so fundamental yet so easily forgotten. Kindness wasn't complicated. It wasn't loud or boastful. It was simple, pure, and infinitely powerful. And as long as Nathan kept carrying that first-class heart with him, she knew that the world would continue to be just a little bit brighter because of him.